I think in that case, we should just about ready to get started. Give me 1 sec to mute the stream on Twitch because I have them both open. There we go. All right. So, in that case, hello everyone. So, like I mentioned, if you aren't able to join the video share or my screen share on Discord, instead hop on to our Twitch where everything is also streamed. You can find our Twitch, Twitch TV/UBC Game Dev. The link is in the promos channel. All right. Also, if you do have your mic on, you're totally free to unmute it when you got a question to ask. But for now, just to keep background sound to a minimum, because we do have quite a few people here, then I might ask you to just put that on personal mute, or put yourself on push to talk. All right. But now we are ready to get started. So hello everyone, and welcome to the UBC Game Dev launch party. Thank you all so much for joining me. So for the event, pretty much what we'll be doing is the first 40 minutes will be a presentation from me about UBC Game Dev, how it works, and what this year is going to look like. Then after that, we'll have a short presentation from Quiver Games, which used to be one of our previous teams. Then we'll have our first industry workshop from Skybox Labs with Parker, who I think I saw in the channel earlier. Awesome, great to have you. Let's get on to it. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Let me just quickly switch some stuff around so that people on Twitch will be able to see everything. All right, and let me tell you a little bit more about the club, UBC Game Dev. So so I've already talked to a lot of you about what the club is in general, but we are UBC Game Dev. We help members to learn, create games, and we connect them with local industry and a community of developers and creatives. Pretty much what we do is we help people make games from the ground up, put them into teams, work on them, and at the end of the year have something to show off. So we do have some official meeting times. This is Wednesday and Thursday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. But these are not mandatory, completely optional. We have a room, Buchanan A101, which is in the Buchanan building. You can totally find it if you put it on Google Maps. And we'll have that room 6 to 8 p.m. You're free to come down there and hang out and work on the games, work with your teams, all that stuff. But like I mentioned, not mandatory. We'll be posting all the important club updates and stuff like that into our Discord, probably in our promos or our announcements chat. All right. You can also totally check out our website or our Instagram and Facebook. I totally recommend following those social medias if you want to make sure you don't miss anything like our cool events. So, moving on, I actually have a short little video. Sound may or may not come through. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. There's not too much that'll be missed. So let me just kind of play it. All right. Someone asked where the song was from. That song is actually from Pokemon Battle Revolution. So, yeah. All right. And moving on. So just a short little video. As you saw, what we do is industry workshops. We have project teams, a big year-end showcase. We put on tutorials and to help out people learning stuff about game development. And we have our Game On conference. So I'll be talking briefly about each of these in the next few slides. So first of all, our most important thing is pretty much project teams. So pretty much this is a chance to get right into developing a game and actually work on something that you have a chance to put on your resume and potentially finish and even put on Steam. So we take people from each kind of role in game development, so art, programming, writing, and music, and we put them together so that they can work on a team, on a game throughout the year. So we do kind of have three different kind of types of teams, and I'll talk about all of them. Every year we make new project teams, and we'll make new teams just based on demand, how many people want to be part of a new team, and how many people we have. We do have returning teams, so these teams were working on a game last year and they're still working on it this year, or they're starting a new game and they want to kind of stay in the same group. And also, if you're working on your own game project, but you want to bring it into the club and maybe get some new members and all that stuff, then you can kind of do a transfer project team. So for all of these, there's no previous experience required. So to join a new team or to sign on to a returning team, there's no specific previous experience that's explicitly required, though some of our returning teams might only be looking for specific members, so it might not be possible to join a specific returning team. But in general, no experience required. So here are kind of the details. We'll have in the Discord very soon, right after this meeting, right in the promos channel, we'll be posting the links to all of our forums, and they'll also be found in the membership channel. This will include the form to sign up for project teams. And the deadline, as you can see here, is October 3rd, right at midnight. So on that form, it'll ask you about a lot of things, what kind of game you want to make, what experience you have, what position you're looking for, and also preferences like what kind of engine you might want to use, or if you have no preference, that's also all right. Or on that form, there's also a section for other requests, which includes stuff like if you want to be on a team with one of your friends, then you totally should put it in there. So, yeah. Next, you can also apply to be a project team lead, so we'll be putting that form out as well. So each team is led by one specific member who kind of helps organize the meetings and make sure that someone always has stuff to do. Yeah, you'll find those forms in the same spot, and the deadline to apply will be September 30th. It does seem like quite short notice, but for a lot of these deadlines, this is just to get in a team in a timely fashion. If you end up signing up later than this, we'll still be able to put you in a team, but it'll probably be a team that's already started. So after that, we'll make all the teams, and we'll reach out to you to let you know what team you're on October 6th at 6 p.m., and we'll tell you that through Discord. So what we'll do is we'll probably give every single person a tag specific to their team. So if you're on Team 4, you'll have the Team 4 tag. If you're on Team 5, you'll have the Team 5 tag. This is nothing new. It's the same thing that we did last year. So at the very end of the year, we'll have our annual year-end showcase where everyone will get a chance to show off their project to industry professionals. And for that showcase, we require that all the games are kind of submitted by March 25th. Yep. That date is a bit tentative. We might end up changing it based on how things go, but that's currently is our plan for this year. Moving on. We'll also have all project teams will get a chance to show off something during the showcase, regardless of where exactly your project's at, whether it's a fully completed game or just a demo. You'll still get a chance to show it off. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about being a project team lead. So pretty much, like I said, your job is to manage team members and facilitate development of the game. So to make sure that if people are looking for things to do, you're able to point them in the right direction. You'll also have to check in weekly with our VP Project Team Lead, who this year is Kaylin. You'll find her on the Discord. If you go to the very right side of the Discord, when she's online, you'll see under Executive, her Discord name is _Kai. But pretty much you'll check in with her and she'll let you know all the new stuff, all the new events coming up with the club. And also, you'll have the job of organizing meetings and figuring out when your team will meet, how you guys will get your work done, all that stuff. At the very end, for the year-end showcase, if you want to show off your game and kind of compete for all our prizes, we do also ask that you have a 30 to 90 second trailer, and of course, we'll be counting on the team leads to make sure that that trailer does get made. Oops. Sorry, ignore that date. Looks like I made a bit of a mistake. The project teams will, the deadline to apply to be a lead is September 30th, not this 23rd. You can ignore that. So, moving on, there is also one more thing that we're doing this year, which we thought we'd try out. It's new, so we don't know how it'll turn out. But we're planning to also have a big learning team. So the main idea is that we'll have everyone who kind of signs up in a specific role be put on a team. So we'll have all the programmers together in one big learning team, all the artists, all the musicians, all the you know all the different roles together in each of their individual groups. There will be instructors there to help them out and help them kind of figure out what they're doing. Then they'll all contribute content to make one kind of big learning team game that we'll be working on. It's very easy if you sign up for this to also switch to a project team later in the year, but generally this is for people who aren't too sure if they'll be interested in a specific role, or they really want to learn something specific. It spent a lot of time, learning rather than kind of producing a big game project. But there's no experience. So to join our project team, so there's no previous experience required, like I mentioned before. So you can really join either one regardless of your experience. This is more just for people who think they prefer kind of a learning environment that's strictly guided by instructors. We'll also have tutorials. Most of these tutorials were previously recorded last year in each of the streams that you'll be able to check out. So, a bit more info about our year-end showcase. It is our annual awards ceremony. Our plan is to kind of keep it casual and fun. It's not too serious, and you'll get a chance to show off your game to anyone who's interested in seeing it. All the project team's trailers will be shown to the judges. The judges will check out the games, play demos if they can, review the trailers, and then hand out awards. There are plenty of awards, so here I kind of have them all listed. The new project teams will kind of qualify for the Game of the Year, Best Audio, Best Gameplay, all this stuff. So this section will only kind of be available to teams who started developing this year. And all of the teams will qualify and apply for our big awards, which are the Platinum Award and the Audience Choice Award. So last year we had the Platinum Award kind of came with a potential publishing opportunity. We'll see if we can get that to happen again, and if we can, then hopefully one of our games will luckily be going away with that award. So, moving on. So someone asked, how big are the teams generally? Oh yeah, by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A chat or in the general chat, or in the Twitch chat. I'll be monitoring all of them. And I'll answer those questions when I can. There will also be, we should have enough time for Q&A at the end too, so if you prefer to ask questions then, you totally can. So, someone asked, how big are the teams? So, for the project teams, we usually make them teams of 8 to 10, if we can. So we try to put on, we balance out the roles as best we can. We try to have at least one musician, one writer, a couple artists, and a couple programmers on each team. But that does also depend on on how many people sign up. If we get a lot of artists signing up and not a lot of programmers, we'll have to distribute them among kind of all the teams equally. As for the learning teams, I don't know how big in particular they'll actually be. Like I mentioned, it's kind of something new. We're not too sure how many people will sign up for it. But if a lot of people sign up for a specific role, they'll all kind of be put into one big team. If the team's way too big, then we'll split it up if we need to. This could mean anywhere from, it could be 10 people in one kind of the programming learning team, or it could be 50. We'll have to see. So, moving on. Let's see. Oh yeah. So as I kind of mentioned above, as you kind of saw here, the teams are a little bit separated. So all of our teams, including the transfer teams, will be able to apply for these two awards on the bottom. But only ones that started this year will apply for, will be able to qualify for those new awards. That's generally what we're kind of saying here. So I think that the next slide originally had a ton of words on it, but it was kind of replaced with the one before it. If you do have any specific questions about that stuff, don't be afraid to ask it in the Discord. So next, we also do try and hold industry workshops throughout the year. So during these workshops, we bring in professionals from the game development industry to teach and share their experience, what it's like to work in the industry. So we try and cover as many topics as we can. This can range from things like general game development to more complex stuff in a specific area. We do kind of have our first industry workshop right after, just at 7 p.m. After this presentation, which is with Skybox Labs. It's a great chance to ask questions about what the industry's like, to learn from people actually working in it, which can end up being really invaluable experience. So, moving on. I also before mentioned our Game On conference. So, right in the middle of the year, at about January, we try and hold the Ultimate Game Development Conference in Vancouver. We bring in all the game studios we can to come participate. They'll hold workshops, they'll give talks, Q&A, all that stuff, and we also have networking sessions, which is a great chance to meet them and build some connections. And it's open to all students. This year it'll be online again, almost certainly. So it'll probably be free both for members and non-members. But I definitely recommend you check this out if you can, because it's a great chance to learn more about the industry and gain some awesome game development experience. We'll of course be announcing all the dates and all the info for that right here in the Discord, probably in the promos channel. So if you're interested, make sure to keep your eye out. Yep, there's a lot of stuff you can expect. Everything from art to writing to AR and VR game development. And we also try and include a little bit of stuff about esports and what it's like, what game development kind of means from looking from an esports perspective. And yeah, it's a great chance to kind of learn some secondhand kind of experience, which can help a lot when developing games. There'll also be a chance during this conference for our project teams to show off demos if they have them, and show off stuff to the industry. So kind of like a mini test run of the end of year showcase if they have something to show at that time. So moving on, our club does have memberships. So the way the club memberships kind of work is that it's $10 and it lasts for the whole entire year. The AMS does require us to have a membership, so we unfortunately have to renew it every single year. This membership link will also be right in the Discord, along with the forms to sign up for a project team, and it'll be just today. So our memberships are sold through ShowPass, which is a online kind of system for it. You've probably seen ShowPass before being used for physical events. You print off a ticket with a QR code on it. Well, we'll kind of be using it also to kind of track who's bought membership. So the old members who are returning this year will have to renew their membership. So kind of moving on. Make sure that when you buy membership, you don't lose your ticket, you don't lose any of the emails they send you, all that stuff, because we'll ask you for the ticket ID that you have there or on your ticket, and use it to make sure that you're in our you're on our forms, and we can put you in a team. So make sure that you try and buy it before the end of the team's kind of deadline, just because we'll only kind of be able to put you on a team if you have bought the membership. Yeah. If you have any questions about that, don't be afraid to send me a message on either Discord or just send me a personal DM or put it in the Q&A channel. So that's kind of generally it for most of the presentation. I went pretty fast there, so I'm sure that there might be a lot of questions. Does anyone have any questions at this time about stuff? Or maybe what I'll probably do is, I just noticed there's a ton of questions in the chat, so I think I'll go through and answer some of these. So someone asked, for the project teams, do you have a tutor? So generally in the project teams, we try to balance things out in terms of experience. So if you put on your form that you have very little experience in like a certain role, we'll try to make sure on your team there's someone else who has more experience in that role who can show you around. Um, so kind of moving on, someone asked if I want to learn but also want to create a game, what team should I join? I totally recommend joining a project team. So like I mentioned, in the project teams, even if you have no previous experience, it's a great way to join and learn. You get a chance to kind of hands-on develop your own game, which in many ways can be the best way to learn. Yeah. Someone below asked the year-end showcase is not exclusive to the teams, right? So for the year-end showcase, if you kind of register for us as like the learning team or the returning team or anything like that, then you totally get a chance to show off your games all on the stage. Otherwise, for the year-end showcase, we might have boothing where you'll have a chance to show off your game even if you're not kind of part of a team. Yeah. Also, other people from around UBC, so not just members, are able to come and will be able to come and spectate the year-end showcase as well, which is great because we'll have an Audience Choice Award where the audience will be able to kind of vote on what their favorite game is. Yeah. So kind of moving on, someone asked if the workshop will be recorded. I think it'll be streamed on our Twitch, so it should be, and it'll be available there too. Someone else asked about the membership fee, but I answered, oh yeah. So someone else asked about AMS Campus Base. So we do have an AMS Campus Base page, but we don't really use it very often. So the only time we really ever use it is for elections at the end of the year. You don't have to sign on or be a member on Campus Base at all. Mostly you just kind of have to make sure you sign up here on Discord. All of our kind of memberships and stuff like that will be handled here on Discord rather than on Campus Base, just because Campus Base, excuse me, it's a bit tough to kind of get everyone on there. And plus, we also accept non-UBC students as well as UBC students, and grads are welcome too. And Campus Base isn't too friendly about that. Someone asked if instructor applications are still open. Yes, they are. I think after this I'll repost that link as well, but in the promos channel, if you scroll up, you'll find a link to sign up to be an instructor, and you can totally fill that out, and I'll reach out soon. We're always accepting new instructors, even if it's your first time with the club, you're kind of new to the club, you haven't been part of a team before, you can totally join and or help us out as an instructor, which is pretty awesome. So, moving on, will everyone who applies for a project team get into a project team? Yep, 100%. Oh, as Kai responded. Yep, definitely. So, yeah, we always try to make sure a big thing with us is inclusivity. If you sign up for a team, then we'll definitely be able to put you in there. The only issue is if you have very specific requests. So, like, for example, if you ask to be on a team that's using some specific game engine and we don't have anyone else who's doing it, then we won't really be able to put you in there. But, other than that, we always try to make sure that you have a chance to get into a project team. I will also say that between the teams, after we kind of put you on your team and you get started, if you want to switch between teams, that's all right too, but you'll have to let us know. Yeah, and then we'll be able to make that happen. All right. A lot of these questions are being answered in the chat. Yep, someone asked where the link. All those links will be posted right in our Discord. So most of them will be posted in the promos. They'll also be posted in our 2021 membership channel as well, just in case. So, and hopefully you won't be able to miss it. Oh yeah, so someone asked if you're able to take on multiple roles in the same project. Yes. The forum kind of has, like, you're able to select how much you want to do each of the roles. So for example, you can say, I want to do, well, it's like a 1 to 10 kind of scale. So I say, 6 for programming, 6 for music, and 1 for the other 2. Then we'll put you on a team that kind of looks like it needs a bit of help with music and a bit of help with programming, or whatever, although that applies for whatever 2 roles that you choose. So yeah, you can take on as many roles as you want, even if it's all 4. Yeah, and then, when you're on the team, you'll probably end up, picking up different tasks as it goes on. If you are arriving late, no worries. Yep, like I mentioned, my screen share has hit its limit, but you can join our Twitch, which you'll find in our promos if you want to check out what I'm sharing on my screen, and mute me in Discord or mute me in Twitch because I just realized I'm talking on both. Someone asked if they can resubmit the form because they submitted theirs by mistake. So you might have submitted an old form because none of the forms are released yet, and no worries about that. Yeah, if you end up if you submit your form and you made a mistake, then just let us know and we'll totally be able to let you resubmit, or we'll fix that thing for you. So no worries about that. But try and let us know as soon as you figure it out, just so that we don't accidentally put you on the wrong team and then figure out something's amiss. One quick thing, I realized I mentioned earlier something about you're able to, yeah, so if you want to work in a specific game engine, so for example, if you want to specifically work in Unreal or specifically Unity, then you'll be able to put that on your form and we'll be able to put you in a team for that. But it seems likely that we'll have teams for Unreal and Unity. Most of our games in the past were all made in Unity, so if you put that you don't have a preference, then it's likely you'll be put onto a team with other people that want to use Unity. As for other game engines, I heard there's a new one that's really popular. I don't know how to say its name. I think it's either Godot or Godot. But anyway, if there are enough people who are interested in doing that, then we'll also have a team for that. Oh yeah, you can also join a team no matter where you are in the world. Yeah. Like I mentioned, the in-person stuff is optional, so you can totally help out with game development even if you're not in Vancouver. Yep, that's not a problem at all. You'll be able to work out with your team lead, kind of how it goes, whether you just communicate by text or find a time to meet. Luckily, with game development, you can always kind of make stuff and send it over and make it on your own time. There are times when it's really, really useful to kind of work with other people in your team. But yeah, in general, that shouldn't really be a problem. Awesome. Oh, I just realized I have been neglecting the Twitch chat. Good. There are no questions there. Yeah. Awesome. Yep. We usually so last year we had a lot of people from different parts of the world helping out with game dev. So yeah, that's definitely really awesome that we could have other people join. If you do have friends who might want to join the club but they don't go to UBC or they go anywhere else, feel free to totally invite them to join us because we always welcome new members. Yeah, they still have the same membership fee. There are a lot of other clubs that they have a reduced fee for members, for UBC students, but not us. They'll join for the same cost. Someone asked what are specific tasks that artists and writers do. So there's a lot of different tasks actually, more than I could probably name. So when you're kind of signing up as an artist, that'll include stuff like, for example, drawing graphics for the game in general. Whether you're drawing like 2D sprites, whether it's in pixel art or regular line art, based on what your team decides. It'll also include modeling whole 3D models, making textures, all that stuff. Will kind of include the tasks that artists will end up doing. As for writers, it does depend kind of on the game. The game might have a lot of dialogue. The game might not have a lot of dialogue. It might have a lot of background lore, a lot of cool descriptions on items, stuff like that. There are some teams that they kind of have a game that doesn't really have too much need for writing. There's not really too much room for it. If you kind of sign up as a writer and we put you on a team and it turns out your concept leaves you with not very much to do, you're always able to kind of switch to different, to like another team that might be more in need of a writer, stuff like that. So someone asked how much commitment is expected. So as you saw before, our official meeting times were, I'm trying to find them, 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesdays and Thursdays. So you could totally, if you came to all those meetings, which like I said were optional, then it'd be about like 4 hours a week. But We're pretty flexible about time commitment. You'll be able to work out with your project team leads, or this is specifically for the project teams. You'll be able to work out with team leads how much time you're able to put in, whether it's a lot of time, just a little bit of time. Um, so we don't really have a strict guideline about how much commitment is expected specifically. We always find that there's a lot of commitment, right at the start of the year or after midterms, but right around midterm season, kind of disappears. Of course, that's reasonable, and yeah, there's no need to kind of make specific deadlines, except what your team leads might ask you to do. Someone asked, just to confirm, do we have to pay a membership fee to join the project teams? Yes. So what we'll do is we'll probably kind of start assigning teams and putting people on teams for all, throughout next week, going up until, October 3rd. After that date, we'll kind of be checking through and making sure that everyone who signed up or everyone who got put on a team did kind of buy a membership. Yeah, but the membership also gives you free access to all our tutorials, all our workshops, all that stuff. So yeah. Oh, I think someone else asked something about. Actually, I kind of have to scroll back up because I missed someone's question a while ago. Oh, no, I didn't. All right. So someone asked. Yeah, they had their own game they've been working on. What opportunities do they have to share their projects? We do have, although I think it's hidden right now. We in our members chat, I think we do have a kind of show your work channel. So also, there is way more stuff on this Discord than you can currently see if you're a new member. Once you get the membership tag, it kind of opens up the world for you, and we'll be giving out those kind of tags on Discord once we kind of release the memberships. But yeah, you'll have a chance to kind of share your own project there, for one example. You'll also have a chance to kind of ask around in the general chat, stuff like that, for people who want to help you out on your project if you're interested. I should say that you could totally sign up as a member and not join a project team. That's completely all right, or a learning team. You can also kind of just sit around, share your work, look for people who have similar interests. You can always ask if people are interested in playtesting in our general chats, all that stuff, which can always be a great chance to show off your game to others. So yeah, you'll totally have that chance. We'll also see during our Game On conference and during our year-end showcase. On the year-end showcase, with just your own game, we might not be able to let you have the main stage. That we will probably have boothing that'll give you a chance to kind of sit in the booth, show people your game, and talk with them about it. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So pretty soon here, we will be getting into a presentation from one of our previous teams. In past years, they worked on the game Mythos, and now they've kind of incorporated into Quiver Games. And we have David here to give us a quick presentation about that. I think it looks like there aren't too many other questions in the Discord, so I think if David, if you're ready, then we'll switch over to that. And if you guys do have any other questions now or later, feel free to pop them in the chat and I'll answer them throughout the rest of the presentation. Oh, yeah, you got an extra 5 minutes, because then right at 7 we'll be switching. All right, I'm going to stop my stream and give you the spotlight. Oh yeah, and for those of you watching on Twitch, I will also change the Twitch that is watching this stream, so.
And we have been hard at work for almost a year now making this thing. And today I have Ethan and Ryan with me today, so we can answer questions later on. I think in a separate chat later on, if anyone has any questions about what I've been up to and stuff like that. But that's everyone. Lovely faces. And now you get to shut me up for a second, as I'm going to show you what we have created. This is a video from last January that won us the first place awards at the Developer Den, right in this club. Oh no, sorry. What was it? In Secos, I was told there was no audio. Just a tab. Oh, sure. I will do that. Okay, sorry about that. You can continue. What is Mythos? So Mythos is a 2D Metroidvania game so we're creating with a interactive magic system where we're emphasizing the different uses of the ability in regards to movement and combat, as well as like putting new innovative spin on what happens when you switch those abilities around. We have a Cthulhu-inspired visual style and many interdimensional creatures that you'll encounter. The story kind of revolves around you coming to your parents' home, discovering your family is missing, and your house transformed into this kind of multiverse event horizon where all these kind of dimensions are interlocking and breaking. And there's also this kind of eldritch corruption that is going around and corrupting the denizens, make them the worst versions of themselves, and kind of provide a more kind of psychological narrative where your choices will either doom or save all those dimensions. So over the last 6 months or so, we basically redid everything. We completely new art style, have an entire new pre-production timeline in place, and we're currently building a vertical slice for the game, which is a piece of the game that we can show for producers and seek funding later on. We're in the midst of development of that, and we have basically the key sprites already done and implemented. Now we're just making things pretty. So I'm going to show you some progress of the art, and something that will come out of this club for you guys, and something that I share for every presentation I do like this, is the importance of iterating and iterating fast. Basically, I've gone through multiple stages of prototyping for this game and like improving the graphics and learning as we do, as we have been in the same place that you are now just a few years ago. And I believe we kind of accomplished a lot and like got really cool artists that do really cool art, and getting new stuff rolling out. So we have some new environments that are currently in the work. See some concept for those, some like the different dimensions that we want to include in the game. Some new enemies from the vertical slice that we are producing. We have these kind of two clans of creatures that are currently combating each other inside this dimension. So have really nice designs from the art team, as well as some new visual effects that that's mostly my contribution on the technical side of the project. But learning on a lot of Unity systems and everything about it is just super powerful and super nice. So you get to do really cool things in it. Some of the stuff that we did in the last little bit was we won multiple awards. Starting with the Game On conference last January. We won the developer then first place, as well as the following end year showcase. We won the Platinum Award in that event as well. Around a month later, we got into the UBC Business Accelerator program, and I've been in there for a few months, kind of developing a additional idea that I'll inform you of in a second. And we just applied to the Unity Creator Challenge, where we can receive a lot of funding for all of our endeavors and kick off kind of the unification of the community. And so aside from the game, we've kind of cultivated this idea for a few months now and trying to create a more kind of unified game development community in Vancouver. So we started a startup. So for Quiver Games, we want to create a physical space where developers can come together and exercise their passions with all the industry's tools and perks at their fingertips. We want to be able to connect people that want to go to work into games to actual game development jobs, and provide just better talent for the industry to create better content for people, and that way just create better stuff overall and improve the condition of the industry as a whole. And overall, we want to make the game development experience as accessible as possible and as professional as possible, and bring the level that people create their content at to a higher level that can suit kind of the high bar that the industry sets. So just a little bit about what I found the problem is a lot of people that are starting out. It's very hard to get going, but it's I think from my experience, game development is a super rewarding endeavor to go on, especially since like the multidisciplinary kind of team that you work on, and people from all these kind of different perspectives and walks of life come together. But like those groups are kind of hard to find sometimes. So developing better developers will help this help solve this problem and make people create better content to basically make this makerspace happen. So we're looking in the early stages of it. A lot of it is, but basically what we're trying to do is like build a makerspace, connect people together with local industry, really bring them in there, and actually have like permanent people that have those experiences that you want to learn. They're helping you create your own things. So we'll be working on real commercial products, getting your level of work higher without having to go to VFS and other high-paying institutions in order to make that happen, as well as kind of bring the industry in as well and kind of just unite local communities around just the wonder of making games. A few key things that we want to bring in is just highly specialized equipment that is used in higher fidelity game development that normally students don't have access to, like VR, AR, and actually like get people to be able to use things like motion capture and stuff like that to really be exposed to industry level processes right away, so they'll be able to transition into work a lot easier. So those are like big lofty goals, but first we are starting up with something I like to call Town One, which is going to be a incubator game jam event that will be happening February 18th to 20th, 2022. It's going to be hosted at the Home Key Esports, which is a co-working space in downtown. So basically everything that I talked about here will be there. Equipment, industry mentors, a space to connect over games, work like in a little bit shorter time frame over 3 days, but able to like exercise and create better portfolio materials. But you can use them basically any job application that you want to go in for game development. And so next few steps for us is just kind of finish the vertical slice and look for funding for the game, run this game jam where hopefully you guys will be interested in coming in. You can read more on our socials with the Facebook event page, which is already live, which has a bit more details about what we're going to do. As well as right after that, just start running like game development cohorts and be able to like foster real projects, get people where we are right now or even better, and help people either like connect them to work or create their own studios. We currently have Blackbird Interactive that is working with us on this, as well as HomeKey, UBC Game Dev Club, and soon the people that make BC Game Jam as well that happened recently. And but yeah, that's basically it. So our socials disappear when I present, and I don't know why, but I'll if Ethan can post it in the chat, the link tree, that would be great. But yeah, well, we'll have a bunch of time for questions, I guess, because I finished really early. Oops.
Yeah, awesome. If you guys have any questions, pop them in the Q&A chat. Yeah. In the meantime, I'll just quickly remind everyone, if you can't, or if you aren't able to watch the stream for whatever reason, or like you can't watch his screen, you can always check out our Twitch. This and the next presentation will be on there as well, just in case we're past the limit. I do have a question.
Yes.
So what would you say, because you've kind of, you've been through a lot of the kind of game development process, kind of starting as a project team. What would you kind of say is like an important thing for new teams to kind of really consider starting out? That'll kind of help them in the long run. Or any like specific tips?
Specific tips: plan ahead and make sure that planning makes sense for you within scope, and try to outline what your basically goals are they're trying to achieve with what we're doing. If you're just starting out this year, like when you get to your teams and stuff, try to like it'll be kind of hard to I guess foresee what happens in March, but in regards to when making your game, try to set clear guidelines for yourself about what the scope of what you're making is, because if you start going a little bit too big, then you'll have to cut down a lot and might be disappointed, and it might devolve from there. But like setting your goals early and getting that documentation early will be really great, because you'll know what you're doing and you can always refer to something when you in the middle of it, and write everything down immediately. When you have a meeting, write notes for it, and organize everything that you're doing, because that will save you a lot of time and headaches later on. So yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've heard that one a lot. Whenever you're working on something, or in game dev, or I've heard, always we write it down, because then later you'll be like, oh, what was that? And then you'll lose like either fantastic ideas or you'll lose your place. It's always there's so much stuff to hold on to that I think writing it down is ends up becoming extremely important. I do have another question, if I'm not stealing it from someone else. Yeah. So what would you say are like the biggest kind of bottlenecks that you found in developing? Like what ended up kind of slowing you down the most, would you say?
For us, it was like right after the showcase and stuff like that. Like we had to redo a lot of things, because what we thought was scalable and usable actually wasn't. So it's good when you are creating things the first time to kind of just question everything that you do, at least for a little bit, and to be able to kind of synthesize the best ideas out of it. Regarding to bottlenecks on a technical side, I'll say, depending on what the capacity of your team is, art and like the more visual things would be the ones that would slow you, not necessarily slow you down, but everything else needs to match that pace, because sometimes you are unable to continue without having the graphics complete. There are a lot of ways to go about it, especially for programmers, to use like temporary assets when you are coding enemies and stuff like that, and just using just like white blocks or like different color blocks and stuff like that. And like to save time on the art side, you can opt to do more kind of procedural workflows, such as like VFX like in Unity instead of and like skeletal animation as well, which is all kind of native in Unity. Those like processes, they save a lot of time, and you won't have to screw around with frame by frame animation as much, because that's extremely time consuming. But like for our game, we're using a lot of skeletal animation, more the procedural things, because it's just easier to work with.
And if I could just hop onto that, if you don't mind, David.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ethan. I'm the story writer / design lead for the Mythos team in Quiver Games. From my perspective, I found that while it is a kind of a collaborative creative process, it is essential to have the design, the ideas laid out first. Because without, if the design, the writers, whoever may be making those creative decisions, if they aren't laying the path for all the technical artists to follow, that's one way it can quickly lead to a bottleneck, and a recurring bottleneck. So just keeping the design ahead, hammering out the plan, and then kind of going forward from there. That's one easy way to kind of get around bottleneck.
All right, awesome. So I think in that case, if there are no other questions, if you guys do have questions later, as you saw, I think their link tree was posted in the questions and answer, so you can reach out to the Mythos team there. Yeah. If there are no other questions, then I think we should be good to move on to the next part of the launch party. We have our presentation from Skybox Labs. The chat has gotten huge, so I'm not sure if you're still there, Parker. Are you?
I am indeed. Can you hear me okay?
Awesome. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great.
Are you good to start just 5 minutes early?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you all. Seeing as you're all at UBC, I put together a presentation called A Million Ways to Become a Game Developer. This is kind of focused on getting into AAA and what my experience has been like, but we'll touch on just a lot of the different ways you can contribute to game development without necessarily doing it through code or even in engine. And I think that's something that's not really obvious to people outside of the industry. So yeah, that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. Whoops, and I pressed, you guys can all see my presentation, right? I'm assuming
yes.
We
can.
Cool. So yeah, I am a video game designer at Skybox Labs. I've been working in the industry for about 3.5 years now. I work on secret internal projects that I cannot talk about, but they're pretty cool. I did UI and UX for Magic the Gathering Arena's mobile port. I'm doing systems design for another secret project, which is super fun. What I currently am playing is The Sims, Apex Legends, RimWorld, and Magic the Gathering. Got a very diverse set of games that I like to play. Keep clicking off. So what did I study to get to where I am? I actually went to UBC for 2 years. There's a picture of me in Martha Piper Plaza in probably 2013, before the Nest was built, so a little bit ago. I never chose a major while I was at UBC. I took a lot of really random courses. Like I have always been somebody very passionate about learning. So at UBC, I couldn't ever decide what I wanted to do. So I was taking classes in calculus, GRSJ, archaeology, writing, kind of anything that seemed interesting. And while I was there, I kind of kept writing about video games, and my professors were like, maybe you should consider doing this. And I never thought of games as a viable career path. Like I, came from a slightly more traditional family in terms of like getting a degree, getting a job. And, my family's stance was if you wanted to make games, you'd be making games all the time, and you're not that artistic, so maybe it's not what you want to do. And because I didn't know anybody in game development, I didn't know that there were ways for me to get into game development. I didn't understand what that path looked like. And, and neither did my parents. I don't blame them for that. So, there's kind of that stereotype of starving artists that isn't necessarily true. So after UBC, I went to Vancouver Film School for a year, and I studied game design. And after that, I started working at Skybox. As it says here, I wasn't always the best student. I really loved lectures. I always excelled in like labs and anything hands-on and project-oriented, but I was super bad at homework. Like I didn't want to do it. I don't know, just I did it, but it wasn't always to my best of my ability. And, that made school slightly challenging for me because it wasn't like I didn't want to be there, and it wasn't like I wasn't learning anything. I didn't learn in the same way as other people around me. The photos are of me at Skybox, me at VFS, and me at UBC. So what exactly do I do at Skybox? My experience as a designer there is actually not the typical designer experience, but it's been perfect for me. They kind of allow me to do a lot. So that's from writing, character design, systems design, UI, UX design, event scripting, project management, all of the hats. Maybe some of you have heard this idiom, but people in industry tend to wear a lot of hats. You just kind of, it's, I guess, a term for like, if you see a job that needs to get done, you put on your writer hat, you go do it. You go put on your programmer hat, you go do it. It's kind of the same thing. And on a lot of smaller teams, probably from even the team we were just hearing from, and the teams that you guys will be on this year, you'll get to juggle lots of different kinds of tasks because, the smaller your team, the less specialized everybody's roles are and the more broadly you contribute to a project. Also, feel free to throw some questions down as I'm going if you want me to answer them. I also have time at the end for questions. Yes, Anna-Main. So, yeah, what does a designer do? So my job is to find the fun in the game. Personally, I prioritize bridging project needs and player wants, and I really enjoy that. I've always been kind of a businessy person, so having producers or people come to me with business needs, me being a player and a gamer and passionate about my games myself, I can kind of design solutions that make both the player and the stakeholder happy. Designers are usually technical, creative, very strong communicators, good at writing documents. I write a lot of documents, and problem solvers. You have to be very creative with problem solving, and it's really fun. I use this GIF here because this is often what I feel like. I'm standing at a whiteboard, drawing out all these crazy lines. Some programmer says, we can't change this. And I'm like, well, I need it to do something else. So I'm going to figure out how to work within your rules to get what I want. It's a really fun job for people who are critical thinkers, I think, but also somewhat artistic. I would have never thought I'd end up in design, but it kind of ended up being the perfect position for me. So yeah, that's kind of a summary of who I am. That being said, there are thousands of skills required in game development. And again, I don't think this is obvious to somebody looking in. So what do we have here? This is a door. All of you look at this and you see a door from Skyrim, right? If we look at this picture, you maybe see a couple more components. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's the HUD at the top with a marker that tells you can go through the door. We have a reticle, we have a health bar. But it's pretty simple. If the door animates open, sure. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this visual before, but when a developer looks at a door, this is what we see. There are so many people involved in getting a door to work the way that you want it to in a game. It's not just going, we need a door. It's going, we need a door. If it's a multiplayer, can all players walk through it? Is it only the local player that can walk through it? Does it lock in certain situations? Can AI walk through it? Does it make sound? Are we working with a sponsor? Do we need a logo on this door? Do we not need a logo on the door? Do we need instructions for the door? Do we have to translate those instructions for the door? Do we need heads-up display on the door? There's so many steps. Quality assurance, you have QA that has to come test the door, and then they test it in all sorts of crazy ways. They're like, should the companions come through the door? Are companions always going through the door? What if I spin 3 times in a circle and then walk through the door? Does it still behave as expected? If I spam the door button, does it still work? There's so much complexity and such a simple problem. And I think this is both part of the fun of game development, but also gives you a bit of insight into how many people are required to make a game, and especially a large game. You need people to hire the people to make the door. You need somebody to manage the finances of making sure that all the people hired to make the door are getting paid on time. You need community management. Customers will be like, well, why did you work on doors when we could have added new guns? And you've got to have somebody to be able to interface with them and explain and provide a segue between user desires and developer needs. So I don't know if there's anyone in here that we want to talk about specifically. I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I can send out the presentation and the link to the blog at the end if you want to look through this yourself. It really is complicated. Yeah, like I said, doors are simple yet so complicated. Again, it's just you don't realize how many people go into making that door work and how many people think about that door until you're playing it as a user. Even for me, I get really simple tasks of do X. But before I can do my part, 12 other people have to have touched whatever it is I'm touching to make sure it works in the way that I can contribute my part and then pass it along to the next person. It's also very cool. It's a very collaborative industry. And, you probably won't see that large of a scale of that on your projects, but if you do go to work in AAA development, you have very, very specialized roles doing very specific things. I have here, games need designers, engineers, artists, audio, testers, leaders, marketers, legal teams, translators, IT. I mean, you need very smart IT people to make sure that we all have our machines working. To run very expensive games and download very expensive code bases. Expensive in terms of space. So there's a lot to it. And so, that's kind of what the foundation of this talk is that there are a million ways to contribute to game development. So just kind of myth number 1, which you probably are all aware about, you don't have to have a degree in games to work in games. I have legitimately met people with masters in astrophysics working as 3D modelers. And it's really inspiring to constantly be meeting people that have degrees or even don't have degrees and in literally everything that somehow ended up in games. And it's probably one of the few industries where all of that knowledge might actually come in handy one day, because one day you might be working on a fantasy game and the next day you're working on a space game. And suddenly somebody's deep knowledge of physics is extremely useful because we're talking about different gravities in different parts of the solar system. I have a quote in here that says, don't go to school for acting, go to school to learn. When I was probably 10, I went to a film festival and I really wanted to be an actress. And my mom's like, you should ask the director, if you want to be an actress, what do you have to do? And he said, don't go to school for acting. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm not saying don't go to school or don't get a degree, but don't go to school to get a degree in acting. Go to school to learn. Learn whatever it is that you want to learn, because you will learn acting through whatever it is that you're studying. And I think that can be said about game design as well. Later on, I'll kind of explain how to look at anything from a designer angle, or just game development in general. You can really pull information you've learned in all sorts of corners of school to being relevant to whatever it is you're doing on a day-to-day basis. History and literature teach you context. They give you scope of where you are in history and where humans have been, and it helps you understand how humans make decisions and, you know, patterns that we tend to have in societies. You know, in math and science, you learn critical thinking. In literature and art, you learn communication, both visual and written. And all of those things, you know, literally you're studying a certain work of writing or a certain painting, but like abstractly, you're learning a new form of communication and you're studying why it works. And that why can be applied to anything that you do. Like, even if you decide to go get a job, I don't know, working in accounting, like the skills that you've learned from looking at art on different ways to communicate with people might actually come in handy when you're putting together a PowerPoint. I'm not saying what you're going to do in oil painting, but you subconsciously start to learn like different flows and how things can be visually communicated. I kind of have an analogy here too. Like, I don't know if anybody here plays Dungeons and Dragons. I'm sure a couple people do, but like, you know, with any job, like everybody coming in and like a D&D party, yeah, we like Dungeons and Dragons. You have your own backstory when you start a D&D character and your own perspective, and that's kind of fueling your character's decisions as you play the game. And as you slay the dragon or do whatever mission it is you're doing. It's kind of the same with any job you have. Everybody comes in with different degrees and educational backgrounds, and that's kind of like, you know, your backstory, that you're bringing your own perspective to help achieve whatever task is in front of you. We have a joke that, you know, pretty much everybody you meet in games doesn't have a degree in games. Like, people really do have degrees in everything. I actually asked Skybox before I went to this talk, you know, what is everybody's educational background? I made some really great answers, and I pulled a couple out that I really liked. There's one person that worked as a dentist for multiple years before they decided that they wanted to do game development. And so they swapped. It's never too late in your life to change careers. And, you know, as long as you are studying, like, how to make games, like, I mean, being in this club is a great example. Or, again, some of the stuff I'll go through later, like just learning how to be a critical thinker about the things around you. Like, it's not that hard to swap. Like, you can do it. You really can do anything you put your mind to. It's a little corny, but I do believe it. Like, especially when you hear some of the stories of these people. Like, somebody here went to university for costume studies, and once they started working, they realized that wasn't for them. So they did a quick diploma in accounting, and then they specialized in entertainment accounting. And they've got to work on a whole bunch of projects that they really like. You don't like get a degree specializing in entertainment, but you kind of, you know, with that degree, you start to pick up different jobs and you kind of stay in the same industry. You know, there's another person here that I think I did solder for 2 semesters. Then they realized they love music. They tried music. Then they were like, maybe I want to do computer science. They got a co-op and they kind of stuck to it. Civil engineering, again, another person that worked as a civil engineer for a couple of years, or a couple of months, I guess, before they decided that maybe game development is interesting. And they go and they do. Like, they get a co-op, or they go make a game on their own, or they just practice, or they learn on the side, and eventually it kind of pulls out, which is really cool. Pulls through. So kind of my second point I want to make is you don't have to work in engine to work in games. You know, when you think game developer, you think somebody working in Unity and Unreal, actually building assets. But games, you know, like any company, you need a lot of people behind the scenes to make things happen. And it's not as glamorous maybe to some of you to hear like, oh, I'm not putting things in engine, but it's just as important. Like having project managers, translators, recruitment, HR, legal, marketing. Like, there are people who specialize in doing these kinds of like business tasks, specifically in entertainment. And so they get to work in an environment that they love, in a topic that they love, while doing something that they are skilled at or they enjoy doing. You know, they didn't have to learn something like 3D modeling to work in games. And again, I don't think that that's always obvious. That, you know, there really are, like, my example here is like, if you go onto EA's website and you look at all of the job postings, there are thousands of job postings, and probably only half of them are in game development. There's like even stuff in economics. Like some games, like you have such an intricate economy that you don't use game designers to balance it. You might use an economy specific game designer, or you might hire an economist to balance your game, because you're essentially running simulations of a real life economy in your game. Like there's some really crazy and niche stuff out there that people have been able to take very specific things they learned in school and apply to these different games. I think it's really cool. Yeah. Again, like I like Overwatch, so kind of an Overwatch analogy. Like in Overwatch, not all of the heroes are soldiers, you know? Some of them are like, I think Ana was a captain, Mei is a scientist, but they all kind of come together to achieve their goal. And again, it's kind of a corny analogy, but it's also super true. Like Skybox wouldn't run as well as it does without people hiring other amazing people to work with us, or people making sure that our computers are running, and people making sure that our buildings have everything that we need. It really is a team effort, and all those people too, they like games, and we all hang out and we still have the same kind of collaborative effort together. Exactly, Winston's a monkey. Thirdly, you don't have to be good at games to work in games. Recently, I saw something go viral on the internet where I think it was actually Overwatch, where someone was like, how can you be the community manager for Overwatch if you're only in silver? And I think that's a myth. Like you can understand a game without being good at it. You know, it's actually, I think it's different skills to understand why a game works versus be good at the game. And they're both valid. And honestly, being bad at games sometimes makes you a better developer. Personally, like I joke that I have a goopy goblin brain. I forget which YouTuber says that, but I like that term. I think it's Gus Johnson. I've taken it. I use that term all the time. You know, I want to play games. I want to get cookies. I want to press green buttons. Sure, that maybe makes me psychologically weaker, but I enjoy it. I like to just sit on the couch and zone out and swing my sword around and progress. It feels nice. And so, you know, I think a lot of people are like that. Like games are supposed to be something that they enjoy. And so when you start thinking about, you know, I want this to design things to be both skillful for people, but also, you know, to allow players like me who just want to zone out and press buttons to have a good time, like it's definitely accomplishable. Games are one of the newest like mediums of entertainment. I think it's about 30 years old now, 40s, like I think, especially like home game systems. And we're one of the only entertainment industries where genres are still evolving. Like 20 years ago, Battle Royale was not a big thing. Now Battle Royale is everything, you know, same with survival games. Like that's a fairly new phenomenon. Minecraft, that almost invented its own subgenre. And it takes innovators to do that, but also like as these genres become more mainstream, people subconsciously understand how these games work. And so your job is to take what they intuitively know already and make something new for them to interface with. That's a little bit of a ramble, but like I've been helping a lot with other projects. I've seen a lot of projects lately, like lots of different games in development. And I realized like that's a problem for a lot of people, is understanding that a good game can be challenging without being unintuitive. Like it can still provide challenge to people that want to press green buttons. But that green button is kind of what helps them understand where to go forward. Yeah, again, I wrote like my lack of skills comes in handy when I'm designing. Like all the time I talk about at work, like I won't read anything. I will not read your tutorial. I'm really sorry. That's how it is. That's also how a lot of players are. They won't read your tutorials. So how do you design an experience for somebody that, you know, oh yeah, it's Nikki JT. Sorry, I just saw that. That was the goopy goblin brain. But yeah, if a user's not going to read your tutorial, how do you design an experience that they'll understand? It's a fun challenge, and I think it's doable. You know, there's lots of like psychological tricks you can do to make sure people get it. And that's another degree that you could probably do that would be very useful to becoming a game designer. That's not a game design degree. So yeah, how do you become a game developer then? I think the first most important thing, especially for designers, you can do is ask yourself why with like pretty much anything you do or look at. I don't know if anybody knows the concept of Norman doors, but it's any door that is unintuitive to use. Like in this GIF, the door's probably locked, but like you all know those doors where it says push, but you pull anyway, and you're like, well, now I feel stupid. I couldn't figure out how to get through the door. A lot of times in design, we'll say it's never the user's fault, it's the designer's fault. And with these doors that we're looking at specifically, like if you've got that handle like that, you intuitively want to pull on it. But if you're supposed to push the door, you've got the sign says push, but the intuitive part says pull. So people pull and they get stuck on the door and then they get frustrated and they can't walk through it. You know, how do you solve that? That's just like one example. It's not even like an incapability to read signs. Like people just, they won't, that's not what they're thinking about. They're not walking up to people. You've walked through so many doors in your life that it's instinctual how to get through them. You shouldn't need instructions to open a door. And yet we've got all these doors in the world that need instructions to get through, you know, like we could do better. You know, just design is everywhere. Like, you know, I remember in school they talked about like cars, like, you know, the headrest, there's like a little gap on the headrests, especially in newer cars. That actually came about because women were having ponytails in their hair and getting like headaches from having it dig into their head without the circle for it to kind of rest on. It's kind of interesting. But, you know, again, I just say like, look around and ask yourself why something is the way that it is. You know, like when you're cooking, why did I not understand this cooking instruction? Was it because I was skimming too fast? Sure, that could be my fault. Or maybe the instruction could have bolded the words better so that if I'm skimming, I'm picking up on the parts that are actually important versus not really knowing what I'm reading, right? You know, why did the game have this feature despite users saying that they didn't want this, you know? And a lot of times, like, you can look at a game and understand that for yourself, you know? I can't think of a good example off the top of my head. Well, yeah, nothing I can say. I want to give examples for other games I know of. But, you know, sometimes you look at a game and you might be able to, just by studying it a little bit, like deduce where this feature came from. Like, especially if it's like, you know, good examples is like you see reskins. Like reskins are a good way to add more content with very low effort because it's paint and it's very low risk. You don't have to import a whole bunch of new assets into the game. You're just swapping a texture and that texture pipeline's already set up. And maybe users are like, well, we really didn't want more skins, but like giving more skins is the easiest way to get content out quickly while they work on other features. You know, there's probably one person working on those skins while other people can be devoted to generating more, you know, deeper features, you know. And some games do skins well and some games don't, like, but, you know, just looking at games, trying to think critically about why something was done the way that it was done. The third one I have on here is, I don't know if this is still a problem. I think it is. People driving their cars onto stairs at UBC. Like, again, that happens once. You're like, okay, maybe that's human error, sure. But like, that's happened enough times that you start to wonder, like, why do people keep doing this? Like, is it really because there's human error, or is it because maybe it's not obvious that you're not supposed to turn there? And when I was looking at when I wrote this article, this presentation, I looked at some of the photos and I'm like, it does kind of look like you should be able to turn there and go down a ramp, and it's actually stairs. Like, I can kind of get it, you know, like, I think, you know, it's easy to just go, people are stupid, that's why this happened, or EA is mean and that's why they do these skins, you know. But it's harder to look at it and go, but why? Like, why did this happen? Why do people drive down the stairs? You know, what is it about this specific set of stairs that's hard to distinguish from a road? What do other roads look like? What do other stairs look like? What does this set of stairs have in common and have different from these other two examples? Yeah, other very obvious way to work in game development is to just learn online. Like, there are so many resources online that are so good, like that, to the point where, like, you know, even working, if anybody here is studying like programming, I think there's a joke where it's like 3/4 of your job is just like searching the right thing on Google and then kind of translating it to solve whatever problem it is you're trying to solve. I think a lot of developments like that too, you know, like you have different contexts, but it's kind of the same problem over and over. And, you know, reminding yourself the basis of how to solve this problem is always valuable. I threw extra credits on here. I think that's a really great one. I watched that a lot when I was in school. You know, YouTube again, like just if you search pretty much anything you're wanting to do, there's an answer online to do it. And, you know, we talk too in industry a lot that like a good design doesn't reinvent the wheel. It takes things that people are already familiar with and puts them forth in a new light that people aren't expecting, which I think is good. And, you know, again, so much stuff has already been solved for you on the internet. Just take those things, learn from them, rebuild it in a way that makes sense for your problem. Yeah, building mods for your favorite games. There's a lot of designers that started out with modding. I think that was one of the stories of like one of the people that ended up working in games. They didn't have a degree in games. They had like a 9-to-5 job doing something, built a lot of mods for, I forget what game. And then they applied for a game design job and they're like, wow, you built all these mods for our game. You clearly understand our game. Sure, you can have the game design job. And then that's how they got to game design. Like it really is valuable. And it's, again, modding is pretty much the same thing a designer would be doing, just post-launch. Pretty cool. And there's so many games that can be modded too, from like The Sims to Skyrim, like, you know, and there's really great modding communities out there with lots of people that will provide help and guidance to you to make better mods. Participating in game jams is another one I have on here. Really just anything that allows you to iterate on your skills as a designer. Like the Quiver Games team was saying, iteration is a huge part of building a game. And I think it's a huge part of building your skills as a designer. You know, the first time you make a game, you are not going to make Skyrim. Like, that's a bold example. But like, it very unlikely that you're even going to make Stardew Valley. Like, that was one person's project over years that he iterated a ton on that project. I think it was like 7 years or something like that. Rebuilt the characters 3 different times. You know, even with your skills as a designer, like I'm constantly learning new things, and every day I've been doing the same thing for 4.5 years, and still sometimes I'll do it again and I'm like, oh, I never made this connection before. Cool. Play and build games. Like, play your favorite games, and again, ask yourself why. Like, why do I like this piece of the game that I'm playing? What makes it fun to me? You know, something I was having a team I was working with do is like, they really like Doom. They're really inspired by Doom for the game that they're working on. And so I'm like, why do you like Doom? What about it is fun? And like, we like this thing. We want to do this mechanic. You know, and then I'm like, well, what is it that makes that mechanic as good as it is? Let's watch the game in slow motion. Let's point out all the little pieces. I think we're specifically talking about the grapple. You know, why do I know to grapple onto certain things? Why does it feel good in these moments? And when you slow it down, you're like, oh, it's a very subtle animation. And there's a very subtle like UX thing that happens in Particle that all comes together so quickly that I don't notice it as a player, but it all helps make it feel very, very good. It's very polished. Watching anything in slow motion is a really good way to understand why different moments feel good. You know, like you can listen to lectures from like GDC. Actually, I should have put GDC on this slide. Listen to the free lectures from GDC and listen to them talk about Overwatch. You can also watch those same moments in slow motion on Overwatch and pick up on new things for yourself if you're just asking, you know, why does this feel good? Why do I like shooting stuff? Well, there's a really nice, like there's nice feedback in Overwatch. When I hit stuff, it sounds nice, it looks nice. I don't have that in other games. Therefore, I'm a little bit more confused on if my shots are successful or not in other games. Does that work to the advantage of that game or the disadvantage? I don't really know how much knowledge some of you have in games already, but you know, there's 2 kind of fundamental parts of game design. One is pillars. Like you usually have 4 pillars that your game is, 4 or 5 pillars that your game's built off of, which is like your foundations for why this exists. Like, I don't know, Doom might be like bloody gameplay, like always be moving, satisfying shooting. That's why that game is there. And every decision that they make needs to filter back into those pillars. And the second being the core loop, which is usually 3 pieces that you're doing at any moment in the game. Mario is always the best example to use here. Like with Mario is a super simple core loop. It's like walk forward, jump, progress. Off the top of my head, that's probably not the right core loop, but it's very, very simple. Like it's always a very simple, like I'm trying to move forward, collect points, kill enemies, move forward, collect points, kill enemies. Same thing over and over. And so, any decisions designers are making, like for everything, filter back into, is it helping that core loop? And does it fit our pillars? So that's how you end up with a really polished game, is you have a very solid foundation on either of those ends. Might be like, you don't have to remember that at this moment. Like that's a long lesson to learn, I think, in game development. And every year it becomes clearer and clearer to me, like parts that I didn't quite understand before. And the more projects you work on and look at, the more you understand these things kind of inherently. But yeah, and any decision designers and engineers and game teams are making in their games generally are filtered through those lenses, because otherwise you get very scattered visions. You really want it to feel crisp and clear. With Doom, it's gory and it's bloody and it's fast. And so everything they do in that game for animations, like there's a whole talk on like whenever the narrator comes out, Doom Guy will punch it and destroy it because that's part of the Doom Guy's personality. And it's such a subtle thing, but it adds so much personality to the game. It progresses things. It helps the user look to the right direction. Like there's lots of reasons that thing exists there. And you don't see that unless you slow it down and you watch and you ask yourself why. Yeah. An exercise I really, really like that I did a lot when I was learning game design was just take your favorite mechanic and rebuild it, like in Unity. Like Anna from Overwatch, her gun heals things. I was like, I'm going to rebuild that. I'm going to build some targets in the world that take damage over time, and I'm going to build a gun that feels the same as shooting with Anna's rifle. And that's way harder than you think it is. So I have start small and giant letters, like just pick out one very specific thing. Like in that case, I just wanted the gun to feel good. I didn't care about the AI walking around. I didn't even care if it was fun. I just wanted to replicate the gun. And I learned so much about that. I learned, like, I didn't know that, like when you scope in a game, like the camera moves, the reticle gets bigger. The reticle might get bigger as you're shooting stuff. It spreads out a little bit. For those of you who don't know, the reticle is like the piece in the center of the screen if you're playing a shooter, like the little dot. That will have animation on it, depending on what you're hitting. There might be a subtle aim assist in these games that, the user doesn't know that's there, but it's helping to make the game fun. And you don't see that stuff until you, again, watch it, ask yourself why, and then try to rebuild it. And like, why does mine feel different? What is going on here that's not happening in my little demo scene that I'm working on? That's just an example. There's lots of different things you can do if you want to work in Engine to learn how to work in Engine. But that was something that, I think for me, I took a lot of lessons from trying to replicate features I liked from other games. And something really important is you don't have to finish a game to learn from it. Like, I think when you're getting started, you might feel a lot of pressure to complete something or to have it be done or feel really good. But it doesn't have to be done for you to have learned something from it. Just that process of starting it teaches you something, or, every moment that you put into building it teaches you something. And then, of course, I have Unity and Unreal on here because they have some really great courses for free to learn development. And I highly recommend watching those because I think anything coming from them is going to generally be industry standard on how to work with different features. Yeah, never stop learning. Like, I really strongly believe you can learn from anything and everything around you. And there's always value to having new hobbies and skills, especially if you're asking yourself why. Like, I don't know, I like cooking. Directions for cooking are another form of design. Whether the person that wrote them knew it or not, it is a form of design. Kind of once you start thinking about that, everything you look at like is design. There's UX to it. There's all of these components that make a game exists in everything around you. It's a lot of psychology. Yeah, it's about the journey, not the destination. And I think too, no matter what job you get, almost anything you learn will have a direct or indirect relation to what it is that you're doing. Like, again, I talk to people all the time who don't end up doing what they got their degree in. Like, they'll never need to know specifically, like, well, I don't know. Like, and a great example for me is like with taking calculus, I was balancing something for a game and realized out of nowhere, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing derivative math right now. It's all coming back. I understand what this is. I understand how to move forward on this problem. But even if I never worked on that game, still the kind of like logic you do when you're doing proofs in math, like that comes in handy elsewhere. You might not write a proof out ever again, but that thought process for dissecting why a formula exists or how it came to be can be applied to so many other things that you do. You know, and that's something that Skybox really values. Like they really like learning. Like I have a bowl of ramen here because somebody had a discussion on how to make the perfect bowl of ramen. But like I actually got something a little bit more out of that. Like I started thinking about it as a designer. I'm like, oh yeah, that does make sense that like you put different toppings in at different times because the amount of broth that they soak up will have a direct relation to how satisfying the bowl is to eat at the end. So I don't know. I think just learning skills in general kind of gives you new perspective, new knowledge, new data points. It's all about data points. Like you're just gathering data points to help you make more educated decisions as you move forward. Anyway, that's the end of my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can talk very specifically about development if there's questions about that. I can talk generally. I figured this was like a nice way to kind of get introduced since I know some of you maybe don't have experience in development yet. But yeah, thanks for listening.
So if anyone has any questions, yeah, you can either put them in the chat, or I think at this point we should be good, as long as we're careful not to talk over each other, to unmute and ask questions if you have them.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, I'm interested, I'm personally a sound designer.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be lumped in with the composer role?
Oh, oops. Is this a question for me or for Parker?
Oh, not specifically for Parker, just in general.
Okay.
Oh, well, in general, I mean, the way that we do it at our club, yes, if you are just a composer, I just go into the kind of musician. If you want, you can put specifically a composer in the notes. Yeah, we kind of lump audio all together, which we really shouldn't do. I know in real game development, it's important to have like different kinds of audio design, but yeah. But for us, yeah, right now, until we get like if we have way more people in different parts of audio kind of joining, then we will separate them. But for now, yeah, I'd just sign up as for the music kind of, yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
I kind of apply this to like real life game design now. Like, you know, a composer. You're right. It's usually there's composer, sound engineer, like sound effects or sound designers, different roles, you know. And like I mentioned, with wearing many hats on a small team, that's probably why they all get lumped together because you're on teams of probably like 5 or something, 6 when you're working on your projects. But in industry, things get a lot more. Depending on what size project you're working on, things tend to get a lot more specialized, which is kind of cool. Like you've got people dealing with, you know, should somebody be able to hear the sound if they're standing next to it? What about 55 meters away? Like it's actually scary how much basically everything you learn in high school comes into games, like from physics to linear algebra to calculus. You're like, well, it all comes up all the time. Like we all joked around when we ever see this. Well, it turns out in game design, you see it all the time. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How often would you say that you feel like kind of or learning in different kind of areas overlaps? Like for example, if you're working on something in writing and then later you have to do something in another part of design, when do you kind of like what ways do you kind of see that you can use the new stuff you've learned in other areas?
I think it just comes up all the time when I'm least expecting it. Like I'll be working on something, I'll start solving a problem, and then like a little connection will be made in my brain. I'll be like, oh, this is the same thing I did a while ago, just in a different form, or again, it depends so much on what you're doing and what team you're on. For me, I deal with a lot of math, a little bit of writing, well, depending on what project I'm looking at. I don't know if that's a good answer, but it really is like, again, I strongly believe in iteration because design and games, it just tends to be the same problem over and over and over and over and over, just in different formats. And I think the more experience you have, the quicker you recognize the kind of problem you're dealing with in that moment. Versus somebody with less experience, it takes you a little bit longer to kind of make the connections. Oh. Did that answer your question? I think that was a little bit of ambiguous answer, but
Nope. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was looking for. Yeah.
Hello?
Yep, we
Hello?
can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So, I had a question, I guess, more on the financial side, because from a lot of other developers on the social media, what kind of a trend I see is that usually, I don't know if this applies to like more smaller size studios, but at least in the bigger studios, what I've heard is that employers kind of know that people that are getting into game development are really passionate about game development. So they're really like they feel like they don't have to provide as much as pay or salary, since this is also a passion kind of work for them, so that they're willing to work for lower pay. So I wanted to ask, what do you think on that, and what your experience has been, as well as like maybe for an extra question, what would be like an improvement you can get staying as a developer for several years in terms of financial situation?
Question. It's a valid question. Obviously I get paid less than if I worked in San Francisco at Apple doing UX design. And you're right that some of that has to do with passion, but it's not like we're getting paid more than a living wage, like it's a very comfortable salary. Personally, I've had a lot of room for growth in the company. Especially I think it depends on what kind of team you're working on. I think with smaller teams, like you might get paid quite a bit less because the studio doesn't have money, but you might get, like, if the game is successful, you'll have more benefit. It's risk versus reward, which is another game design term that we love to see. Like in games, you're always making choices between risk and what your reward will be. Same within life, you're making choices between risk and reward. Bigger projects, like it's a guaranteed salary. It might be less than if you were working at Apple, but it's still comfortable. There's also room for bonuses. There's room to progress in your career. It's, I don't know if that answers your question, but I do understand that, like, from the outside, you're like, well, does that mean they're getting paid pennies? Like, this is purely a industry of passion. And I don't think that's the case. Like, I do think people get paid fairly well because it's still a tech job and it's still fairly competitive, especially for talented people and in certain roles.
Yeah, that was more or less like what I was trying to ask. Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hi, I have a question here. Yeah. Okay,
hear
I
you.
have yeah. I have a question first about the learning team actually about the game development society here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so about that, so the game we developed will not be launched on the launch night, right?
No, it probably won't. But like I mentioned, it's pretty experimental, so we'll have to see what actually ends up happening with that.
Okay, so this team is working like a bigger project that will have tutors to lead us. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. In general, but yeah.
All right. And I also have another question for Parker. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So, I'm not sure that what kind of, resume or background is attracting for game company or game studio to recruit me as as a designer or as a programmer, because I'm not learning in engineering, and I'm not sure that whether I'm in the second year I will be in electrical or in computer. So I'm not sure whether like what kind of background will attract a game studio. Yeah.
Understand. To answer that, I think it has a lot more to do with the kinds of projects that you've worked on, even if they're not published games and they're just student projects. The fact that you've taken initiative and practiced and started iterating on your skills there has a lot more value to studios than anything else. Actually, great example. I'm working on a team right now with 4 people that were in the UBC Game Dev Club. I think this is their first year in industry. I imagine partly why they got, I don't know if that's true or not, but I imagine partly why they got introduced to us was from being part of this club and working and iterating and learning here, and then continuing to have space to learn and develop professionally. I can't say that for sure because I didn't hire them, but I enjoy working with them, and they all have quite a bit of knowledge, and it's easy. It's actually really funny. I was looking through the photos for UBC Game Dev and recognized some of them, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool."
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's about, like having the desire and initiative to join clubs like this and to participate and to build games and do game jams and to learn and practice. I think that has a lot more value than what degree you got. But I still,
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. The streets a little loud for you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in the 3D side of things. I was wondering what Skybox uses as their sort of pipeline, like from if you just do 3D modeling, texturing, and into your game engine. What does that look like for you?
I haven't worked with art directly in a while, but I believe they work in Maya. I think Photoshop for textures. And then when you can take those pieces together and you put them together in Engine, if that's kind of fast what everybody's working on different tools and softwares. And I think the softwares that you use vary from project to project. But also the softwares are all very similar at their baselines. Like Adobe XD, which is a UX tool, and I think Figma. They're very, one's like Apple, one is Adobe, but they're both fairly similar. And if you learn enough skills in one of them, you'll be able to pick the other up very quickly.
I was wondering because I noticed that Blender has become more popular in smaller industries just because it's free and stuff. But anyway, it was interesting. Thank you.
As long as you have this, I can't speak specifically for art, but I would imagine that as long as you can show skill, that you understand what good looks like, that you do know how to model something, they're going to be a little bit less sticky on what software you're using. As long as it's a major software. If you're using some really bizarre, obscure software, they might have a question. But
For me, I've been using Houdini, which is kind of not. It's kind of hard to. It's industry standard for movies and simulations, but not so much for modeling. But I've also used Maya. So I was just wondering about Blender being the free one that's kind of becoming more popular. But anyway, thank you.
I recently heard. Sorry, I'm just going to quickly say I recently heard somebody say that all of these softwares are pretty much the same thing, just with the buttons in different places. And so when you work and swap from software to software, you're kind of just figuring out where the buttons are to do the same thing you've been doing the whole time. Unity to Unreal is like that.
I've definitely heard that a lot, between Maya and Blender, for example. Just because Maya you have to pay for, and Blender you don't, and And in the end, they're almost identical. Just everything is in different places, like you said.
Mhm.
So kind of on that topic, I'm mentioning, the difference between Unity and Unreal. So I've heard recently a lot of people kind of saying that that they don't want to use Unity and they'd rather use an easier game engine. For example, one of them becoming popular now is called Godot, I believe. So to what extent do you think that when you're picking your tools as a developer, you should pick something that's kind of more user friendly versus something that might be more powerful and have more features? Well, how do you kind of strike that balance?
I think it really depends on what you're doing. Like, if you're, so I've never heard of this engine that you're talking about, to be honest. Like, I mostly work in Unreal and Unity and proprietary engines, and it just depends on what the goal is of your product, And even with Unity, people build tools on top of it to get their jobs done better. Depending on what it is specifically. Like Unity is very, very good at doing mobile games, very good at doing, I think, very performant games. I heard somebody once say, I don't know if this is true, but they said that, Unreal is like working with something where all of the settings are turned up on high, and Unity is working with something where all the settings are on low. And kind of picking one of those as your baseline also depends on your programmer skill set, like Unreal, I think, is C++, but not exactly C++. Unity is like C# scripting. So depending on what you're comfortable with there, I think Unreal has really strong visual scripting tools. And so if you're working with a team that doesn't have any programmers, maybe that's better for you because you can build everything with visual scripting. But that's a feature that Unity has recently added, to try to match. I don't know if that helps. I think, again, it comes down to the skills of the people that you're working with and kind of the goals of your project and doing a little bit of research too into if I'm making a mobile game, what are people generally making mobile games in? What's going to be the easiest pipeline? This newer engine that you're talking about, maybe it doesn't have an easy way to build for mobile. So if I'm building a mobile game, I maybe don't want to work in that. I want to work in a product that easily can build my game for mobile. Without that extra effort on us. Again, it's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like if something exists and it's already done well, unless you've got a really, really good reason, you shouldn't be redoing it. You should be using the best tools available to you and using those tools to make whatever it is, to invest that energy that you could spend on making those tools, invest that energy into making a better product or reaching whatever design goals or product goals you have.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Parker. I had another question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm currently a second-year student at UBC going through the cooperative education program, and I actually saw some job postings from Skybox itself, but they were actually for upper year students. So I was wondering if there were is there any emphasis for hiring students, who are in their lower years at Skybox Labs currently, or are you just looking for upper year students, if you have any idea?
Do not know.
Okay, yeah, that's totally okay.
I can ask recruitment if it matters. Maybe there's certain rules around it, but
yeah, for sure, because it was quite a bummer when I saw that they were looking for upper year students, but it's all good.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to apply. What's the worst that could happen?
Get rejected? I wouldn't want that to happen. So,
but why would rejection be bad?
Not really. It would be a learning experience, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You took a chance. Maybe it wasn't the right time for you then, but it doesn't mean it won't be the right time for you in the future.
Yeah, maybe sometime in the future.
Actually, that's a great example. The job I got at Skybox, I applied for a different job and I didn't get it. And then a week later, they contacted me and said, we have another position that opened. They didn't even interview me for the first one, I think. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
sorry, I just got a little distracted. But they didn't interview me for the first job. But then a week later, they said, we have another job available. I think you would be the right person for this. Come in and interview. And then I got the job. So it doesn't hurt. And so even though I got rejected, I got rejected. Thank you. Got rejected that first time. It kind of put my foot in the door for another opportunity. And I do think that is something Skybox does too, or I think any hiring company. Like once you apply, they keep you on record for if there's another opportunity for you in the future. And if you just keep updating your resume basically by applying to a different job every year, like you keep yourself updated in their system, then you might eventually get contact. So,
Honestly, that makes me hopeful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's another good lesson is, as I was told, rejection. Like the word no, like in the context of applying for jobs, just means it wasn't the right opportunity right now. But it doesn't mean it won't be the right opportunity in the future.
Yep, I totally get it. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So, one of the things you talked about was that people in game design have a lot of different educational backgrounds, and that you don't necessarily need a game design degree to be in game design. But if I wanted a degree in game design, would that be a bad idea, or is that sort of more accepted?
I personally don't think any of that is more desirable than anything else. I think it's more about are you logical? What kind of things have you done before? Have you spent time iterating on your skills and building a couple demo projects? Do you have enough? Nobody expects you to, especially as a junior, to come in and be perfect. They just expect you to have a desire to learn and enough foundation to make educated decisions as you make mistakes. Skybox has been a really nice because they're very kind to me about mistakes. I've definitely made a few mistakes on projects, but it's just a learning experience. It's a bit of a tangent, but I at least for Skybox, I don't think that matters. I think what matters a lot more is have you applied yourself to learning the things that you like, Again, I think one of the programmers on my project right now who's in the game dev club studied physics and now he's doing programming, and he's really awesome working in Unity because he had a lot of experience that he'd iterated on while he was in university for fun. And it makes him really great to work with, I think something you can do is look at different job openings at different companies and see what their requirements are to apply. A lot of them will say, 2 to 3 years of experience doing this, a passion for this kind of game, and then they'll have nice to haves, a degree in psychology. But all those things are suggestions, and it's to help you figure out if, do I have the right skills for this job? Even with it's asking for 2 to 3 years of experience, sometimes that's actually variable. Sometimes they might be okay with somebody with a little bit less experience because they have the right experience and the right things for that specific role, if that makes sense. I think one of my teachers at VFS got a job on a big project solely because he was a huge fan of a certain franchise that they were working on, and that was kind of his gateway into the industry. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think games is a slightly strange career path in the sense that maybe it's a little bit less strict on the prereqs to get in, and it's a little bit more about what have you done already. And it doesn't even have to be a co-op. It can literally just be, well, I built a different game in Unity for a month, or I rebuilt the same shooting mechanic in Unity for a month, and this is what I started with, and this is what I have now. And then someone's like, wow, you really learned. This is great. You took the initiative. You might be a great fit.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is that you make it sound like getting a degree in something like actual game design is almost a waste of time if you are sort of developing on your own. But I would have thought if you're doing something that specific in school, you would have a strong portfolio, you would have skills, you would have networked connections. I was just confused about that.
I see. Yeah, you do get those skills. Again, there's a lot of valid paths into the industry, I think is really what I'm trying to say. It can be through getting a game design degree. That worked for me because I got to do a lot of hands-on projects. But there's also people who studied biology and modded Team Fight or Team Fortress a whole bunch, and then got a job on Team Fortress. I'm kidding you not. That is another valid path that somebody took. A lot of the same resources that you could get from game design degree are available online. I think it's more just about how you learn. Like, are you somebody that goes and looks this stuff up yourself? Do you learn in hands-on situations like UBC Game Dev Club? I think, I don't know, that's the best way I can put it. And I think especially for design, it's a lot more about, what kind of logic you bring as opposed to what degree you have on paper.
All right. Are there any other questions? We are nearing the end of the event, but as long as Parker has time, then we could go over time. Just up to you. There's no set time that we do have to end. But for the moment, are there any other remaining questions?
Hello?
Yep.
I have a question. So I'm as in game development, I'm interested in two different things. Actually, more like three different things. So I really like technology and programming in general, but then I also kind of just really enjoyed the design process. It's kind of like a puzzle solving game on its own to make one, but then I also have a great passion for visual arts. So would it be possible? Is it a viable option for me to just kind of do everything at once?
Oh, sorry. I was saying you should be a technical artist then.
Technical artist.
Yes.
Do you mind explaining a bit, elaborating more on what it exactly is?
Sure. So it's so stuff I don't know we said it stuff in Houdini and stuff like that. So any VFX, shader work, or anything like that, that's all something that technical artists to various degrees do. There also is a more programming heavy technical artist role, which is basically you are creating tools for artists to make their job easier. So you're also working with visual stuff, but you're also coding the systems around the game engine. So it's coding on top of Unity pretty much in ways that you can basically make get your artists full artist jobs easier, but you're not exactly a programmer too. But I do a lot of visual effects in that and shader stuff, and that's that can be very programming heavy as well. So it's you should look into just shaders in Unity and Houdini as well. So yeah.
Okay, I see. But then would it also be possible for me to if not in such a specialized kind of field, but say in a small project team to kind of dabble in all fields at once? Or
yeah,
would I be spreading myself too thin here?
It depends how far you go. In my team, I don't touch code myself. But I work with programmers a lot, so I dictate how the code behaves in a way. So it again, it really depends on your team size, and Parker said, you'll have to wear many hats to some degree. So you can, I'll say you should try everything, and then when you get going on all of them, there'll probably be a side that pulls you more, and you can settle with that. But there always can be 2/3 or something like that. That's they will be satisfied in. But in regards to just building skill sets, you should try to build all of them, because you don't know what role you'll get into for a job, right? So if you have experience in all these different things, like VFX, lighting, and like coding and doing shaders and all this kind of stuff is pretty important. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, and I think that might be just about it for the event.
Can I ask one question?
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, go ahead.
I want to ask Parker, is being a game developer rewarding? Like, do you see yourself doing this for the next 15, 20 years, maybe?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Do you
I
like
love it.
love it? Because I want to become a game developer, but my parents are like, what if you get bored of like video games and stuff? I keep telling them, no, I'll never get bored of games. I've been playing them since I was like 3.
I mean,
Like,
so for a lot of developers, like you kind of go through phases, even just with games. Like personally right now, I'm not playing any games because I don't have the capacity or desire to play them, but I will again in the future. I play a couple, I look at a couple YouTube videos, but like I think it more so has to do with like game development is such a multidisciplinary industry, and there's so many very smart people, and people working in games tend to be there because they love what they're doing. Everybody is extremely passionate because it kind of comes back to like you do get paid slightly less than if you were working in banking software, but at the same time you're surrounded with a bunch of very, very nerdy people who really love what they're doing. And
that just sounds awesome. I really want to do that.
yeah, like that's really what my experience is like, and I get to, it's just there's never a dull moment. I'm always solving different kinds of problems, and I genuinely love it. Even from project to project, the kinds of design I do is different. On my last project, I was dealing with how do I take all of the complex inputs for Magic the Gathering and get them to fit onto a phone. And now I'm looking at something completely different, like and a lot more specific into something else that I can't say, but it's just the complete opposite end of that, and it's really cool. And I feel like you just kind of never stop learning. And also, just so I want to quickly go back to like when I was actually in game development school, I specialized in programming and project management. And I was in the same boat of like, I don't know exactly what I want to do. I'm not good at art, so I'll probably cross that off the bucket despite loving it. But I kind of like coding and I kind of like design. And I just applied for a bunch of different jobs, like with different resumes specifically for each of those jobs. I didn't say like I code and I design. It was more like I design and I know a little bit of C#. And you kind of end up in a role. A lot of times I've heard too with game developers, you don't end up in the role that you started in or that you intended to be in. Some people do. Some people I went to school with were like, I'm going to be a level designer. And they go to school, they study level design, they get a job, they're in level design, and they're fantastic at it. Like for me, I was like, I don't know, but I applied to Skywatch. Yeah. And they were like, this is great. We'll put you on to design and you'll design stuff. And then occasionally, can you try UX? Sure, do UX now. Like, you go script a little event here, like, and I get to do a little bit of the code. It's just, like focus on something that grabs your interest a little bit more, maybe. But if you do, like, I think there's still the opportunity to apply for, different roles with different resumes, even if you have both skills. And even once you're in the industry, like if you have a passion for design, there's probably resources and people at the studio willing to teach you design if that's a route that you decide you want to like try to shift into. I hope I answered both questions a little bit, but yeah, I truly enjoy this job. I personally don't think I'll tire of it. It does come in waves. You will get sick of games sometimes, and sometimes you'll love games and be super passionate about it. It's just kind of the nature of it. And the best way to combat that is to make sure you don't make games your life. Games are your life, but like you have other things that you like to do. So your eggs and happiness aren't all in one basket.
All right, awesome. So I think that'll pretty much take us to the end of the event. I gotta say thank you so much, Parker, for joining us and giving us the presentation. It was absolutely awesome. We really loved having you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and I think then in that case, this will be the end of the launch party. So, like we said before, all the forms to sign up and stuff like that will pop up in the Discord, probably the promos and the members channel sometime later tonight. I certainly hope to see you all sign up. And thank you again to everyone for showing up and checking out what we had, the presentations and the PowerPoints. Yeah.
I literally just got here in time to hear you say that it was over.
Well, don't worry. It'll also be recorded. Sorry, Chef. So for those of you who missed the the beginning, don't worry. The recording will be posted in one of the channels probably soon. This channel will remain open. So if anyone wants to stick around, sit in here, answer questions, talk about stuff, feel free. No need to kick everyone out. I'll probably be hanging in here for a while too, but I'm gonna stop the stream, I think, pretty soon here. Actually, I'll probably stop it now. Thank you for those of you who are joining us on Twitch. Hope to see you there. And